destroyed. The fact that you and I are working here today is evidence of that.
There we go. Sorry about that. False alert joined in and the mic was muted. You gotta love technology. Anyways, thank you guys so much for joining us for another episode of DCF Live. Today is Friday, October 21st, and we're just gonna have a fun little Q&A session for you guys. It's been a really fun week around here. We've been prepping for the upcoming DCF experience, round 3, and I want to talk to you guys a little bit about that today. So let's go ahead and say hi to some people in the chat. Now, Mike, looks like we're good now. We got people from all over Honduras. Did I see Florida earlier? Very cool, man. Very, very cool. It is always so cool to see people from all around joining us for these, man. I'm never not surprised at some of the cool locations that we get to connect with you guys with. So anyways, yeah, I want to share with you guys some of the pairs that were created at the last DCF experience. That's going to be really cool because we had some absolute bangers cooked up in there. So anyways, our next event is going to be November 11th through the 13th here in Chicago. That is a 3 weeks from today. And we still have a few spots available. We're almost completely booked. And what we are looking to do is over the 3-day event, regardless of your experience level with custom shoes, we want this event to work for you. So it's been so cool because it's not really possible for me to say that this event has one incredibly specific clientele, that it's just people who are looking to be full-time customizers. No, we've had the widest age ranges imaginable. We've had people in high school to people that are retirees who are looking for their encore career potentially, or just picking up another hobby. We've had people who have never painted a pair of shoes before, which I'll show you something about today. And we've had some people who have been working in the industry for years full time and are just looking to level up one step further. So our team is going to work alongside you and help you any way that you need. You know what I mean? Everybody's looking to get something different out of the event, and we want to be able to help. And I think that a lot of that has to do with me always wanting to be able to not just do one specific thing in the custom sneaker genre. I don't only want to be known for one thing. I don't want to just be a portrait artist or just a cleat customizer or just a anime artist, whatever the case is. I want to be able to do a little bit of everything, and I think that really helps because then I truly believe I can help anybody with a little bit of everything. You know what I mean? Whatever they're trying to get into, I believe that I should be able to, and the rest of the team will be able to help them get there. So we have an additional special guest customizer joining us for this next one. We have Jar Customs coming out, and super excited about that. Rupsy Banks is going to be joining us again. So, just having more creative minds in the room is always an even better thing. And somebody else like Jar of that caliber, who's been doing this for years now at a really high level, is awesome. So super excited to have him there. And then for the course itself, we want to make it so that you don't need to bring anything. So we provide everything imaginable. 2 pairs of shoes, an Air Force One and a pair of old school Vans. This way you get to work with a wide array of materials and, figure out what additives are needed to work with what materials, what prep work is needed. We provide all the paints. Angelus sponsors the course. They send over just a ton of stuff that you'll need. We have access to every paint color imaginable, all the different additives that you need, too thin for your airbrush, too soft so you could work with fabrics, all the different finishers, the matte forecoat, the high gloss forecoat, so you can get that perfect level of sheen. It just all the different size paintbrushes that you could need, and we also supply a Badger Patriot 105 airbrush and compressor that is yours to take home. So even if you don't necessarily plan on using an airbrush in your everyday workflow, you'll still be able to learn about it hands on. And that's the best way to learn, especially with something like an airbrush, so that you can really learn how to troubleshoot it, where things might go wrong, how you might need to fix it, and little tweaks that you may need to do. And just getting a feel for it, because not everybody's used an airbrush before. So just that first time using it and being able to confidently be able to pull it out anytime you need it is hugely, hugely beneficial. So, really excited about that. I am 3 weeks away from our third one. So stoked. And it's just been just adding this side to the business of hosting these courses and stuff has just reignited such another huge passion of mine, helping others in this industry grow. It's been so cool to see everybody who I've connected with at the previous two courses, watching them continue to grow after and continuing to interact with them and follow them on their journey. That's been an awesome thing too. So, anyways, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the pairs that we had cooked up at the previous course. So I'm going to switch over here. Let's make sure this works. Mic still good. Okay, cool. So we have 4 pairs here. I'm going to show you 16 pairs total. Starting off in the top left, here we have a Biggie Coogee style sweater inspired pair of Air Force Ones that was actually painted by somebody who never painted a pair of shoes before. So this is a woman by the name of Felicity, never painted a pair of shoes before, and this is what she did with her very first shoe. When she told me that was her idea on the first day, that, hey, I want to do something kind of to match, the Biggie style sweater. I love the idea because I've done, a couple different iterations of this previously, but I was also thinking, man, that is a lot to try and chew off for your very first pair, but nonetheless, she absolutely nailed it. Then below her in the bottom left, we have Jaw Customs, who did, I can't think of the character's name, but I believe this is from Demon Slayer. He absolutely crushed these. The glows, the gradient, all top notch. The gradient within the hair itself, killer. All of the line work, love it. Then in the bottom right, we have Bearded Bro Customs, and he was working on a pair of Urkel-themed Jordan 1s. So he brought in a pair of Jordan 1s that he wanted to work on, and he did so many cool techniques to really nail these. So if you take a look at the blue, it actually has a little bit of like a denim look to it, so all of the stitching is painted orange. It looks so dope. In the top right, we have a pair of Air Force Ones, and these were cooked up by a man by the name of Henry. And what he was going for, he happened to like the pair of Paris Floral Abstraction Jordan 1s that I did previously and that I had there displayed at the event. And he wanted to sort of put his own twist on there. So he did this cool gradient with this snakeskin pattern on top is what he ended up airbrushing. And then going with like this buttercup on some of the quarter panels and toe box. Loved how those turned out. Let's go ahead and check out some of the next pairs. Here we have in the top left, I believe this is an Instagram page called Nature is Metal, and it has to do with animal stuff, and I had never even heard of this before, but nonetheless, this was a really clean pair by a gentleman by the name of Adam. He totally crushed those doing the transfer method to do his little characters and stuff, so those were really cool. Up in the top right, we have a pair of weightlifting shoes, Wonder Woman themed by a gentleman by the name of Ashby. And what's funny about that is he's actually going to be attending our course for the second time. He's coming to the next one. So really looking forward to working with him again. I've kept in communication with him since the last event also. And, he really did his thing on these Wonder Woman themed weightlifting shoes. He was really wanted to make sure he could nail how to do the Wonder Woman logo and stuff, and it turned out super crispy. Down in the bottom left, we have a Chicago themed pair of Air Force Ones. So you got your Chicago flag on the swoosh. You got some different elements of the pewter on the quarter panels and toe box. He did a map of the L trains on the inside. And I love how those turned out. And then over in the bottom right, we have a pair by, I believe her Instagram name is Lit Kicks by Brit. And I think at the event, she was either 6 or 7 months pregnant, and she was absolutely trucking on. It was so cool to see. She really wanted to master the art of creating an airbrush gradient. She said that she had just been struggling with creating really smooth blends and just getting an airbrush to work properly previously. And so we really helped work alongside her so that she could totally nail a simple 3-color gradient like this. Did a little bit of Bel Air stenciling on top, and I love how those turned out. Number 3 here. Let's pull up the next one. Here we have Jesse in the top left did a Moon Knight themed pair of Air Force Ones. These turned out really cool. This is one of those pairs that you get to enjoy them the more you look at them and all the little details that he incorporated from the show and stuff. So you have the big crest on the outside, right over the swoosh. All of the little almost like hieroglyphics that are on the sort of near the toe box there. On that mud guard, and those turned out sweet, man. He did some really cool techniques to sort of give them almost like a dusty look too. Love how those turned out. In the top right, we have a pair from Shay. She really wanted to just do some airbrush stenciling with some clouds and stuff. She really liked a pair that I made a couple years back for Lil Mosey, and I know she was referencing those a few times. And she really crushed these. I mean, she started off with the gradient and then just was doing all of this airbrush stenciling on top. Loved how those turned out. In the bottom left, we have a pair from Mel, and she just totally knocked out this New York Yankees themed pair. I think on the other shoe she did, I think it was a Knicks theme. And so she did one basketball shoe, one baseball shoe, some really clean stenciling, really clean taping for the pinstripes. And that's just such a clean and simple pair. So I love how those turned out. In the bottom right, we have a pair from Jermaine. He wanted to do a Sonic theme. And again, just really simple, clean color blocking, making sure you can master those fundamentals. And then he did the little image transfer trick, sketching it out to make sure that he could do his little Sonic character. And again, I mean, that's super, super tiny to pack into that little back panel. I mean, you're talking not much bigger than a quarter to do something like that. So really great job by him there. And then over to our last one, our final 4 pairs. Here we have Trey in the top left. He did a cool, I think we were referencing the Spider-Man foam posits from probably like a decade ago that had this sort of red to blue to red gradient. And he nailed that, did some airbrush stenciling on top of there, and those turned out really cool. So super impressed with those. Then in the top right, we have a pair from Doc Flu Customs. He really wanted to do a Travis Scott themed pair of Jordan 1s. And so he nailed it from the little paisley print to the plaid to just nailing the actual colors. Him and I were going back and forth on should he incorporate a little bit more navy blue into that because he thought it was just a dark gray. I said, believe me, you'll want to add a little bit of navy blue in there. And to do this plaid and that paisley print in a matter of a few days, that was a tall task for him. And then in the bottom right, it looks like I have a repeat, so I must have accidentally messed that up when creating the graphics. In the bottom left there, repeat. But in the bottom right, we have a pair from Marsha, and she wanted to do a one Bulls shoe and one Lakers shoe, and just play around with getting a feel for airbrushing versus hand painting, do a little bit of stenciling, and I love how those turned out. She right away wanted to do 2 different shoes, definitely wanted to go with one Bulls theme and one Lakers theme, and she totally crushed them. So that is all the pairs that were cooked up at the course. So that was a great time. Really cool to see all of them side by side. The last day when everybody's showing off their pairs to one another. It was so cool to see. So, all right, let's go ahead over here into the chat, see what you guys are saying. I see some questions about applying the finisher. And let me see if I could get to the let me see if I can get to the bottom of it. So looks like Nick is talking about Angelus just released a line of scratch resistant clear coats in all different finishes. Very thick. Be careful applying it with a brush because it can gob up and give a weird texture. Yes. So if you are going to be applying the forecoat, I do recommend applying it with an airbrush. I do. Yep, that's how I apply all of my finisher now. Let's see. See some other stuff about the finisher. Nick was saying, I'm still figuring out the matte forecoat. With brush application, it leaves blotches of matte glossy spots. Yes, any of the finishers, the forecoats, or the liquid kicks. I don't believe it says it on the back of the Angelus forecoats, but I know it does on the back of the liquid kicks, that it actually says that it's like, it might be worded that it's only recommended or highly recommended to apply with an airbrush. You're always just going to get a more consistent, level, even coat when applying anything with an airbrush versus a paintbrush. So that is absolutely the way to go, in my opinion. Royalty Custom Sneaker says, I uploaded my first YouTube video last week. You don't have to watch it, but I'd love to hear any tips you have. Oh, absolutely, man. I will be glad to check it out. Definitely. Let's see here. Nick P says, Dylan, I just bought the Angelus Grex XG15 airbrush. Goodbye or no? Elbow cough. Yes, that is absolutely a good airbrush. You know, especially with the compressor. Is that the one that has the does it actually have almost like the gun trigger or the top feed trigger? I believe it has the top feed. But anyways, yes, that is absolutely a great airbrush. And you know, as long as you take good care of it, clean it in between, you're not going to have any problems with that. So yes, that's awesome, Nick. Hopefully you are enjoying it. Arian here says, hello, DeJesus. How can I paint yellow on a black shoe? I applied 2 layers of light gray, but it is hard to get the yellow. Any piece of advice for that? Thanks. Yes, so yellow, light pink, or neon pink, those are probably like some of the hardest colors that you could get to try and paint on top of, let's just call it a black Air Force One. I'm not sure what shoe specifically you're working with, but let's just assume it's like an Air Force One. What you're going to need to do, which is where this almost starts to teeter on being too many coats in general, we really don't want to go past like 6 coats for a color. So, you know, if you're painting black, you're going to need to paint at least like 2 coats of light gray. Then you're going to need at least 1 to 2 coats of like mist, and then like another coat of like white to just try to get it as close as possible to, you know, white essentially. And that's going to take you somewhere between 3 to 4 coats. And then to build up to yellow, you know, you're going to need to do sort of like a really light palish yellow before you move into, let's just call it like a big bird, almost canary yellow. So, I mean, right away, you're talking on the higher end of coats, somewhere between 6 to 8 coats. And that's, you know, just more than we would like to do in general. So not the most ideal thing. I just need to share a quick link over to Instagram real quick. And then Leaderboard Customs here. Congrats on 100K on Instagram. Thank you so much, man. Pretty crazy because I actually believe my first post on Instagram, I could be wrong, but I think it was for my, I got an iPhone for my, what would that be, in 2012. So that would be my 20th birthday was when I got my first iPhone in 2012. And I believe that's when I made my first Instagram post. So 10 years ago. I had actually started customizing that previous fall in 2011, but still wasn't a full-scale business yet or anything. So pretty crazy. 10 years to grow to 10K on Instagram. Pretty crazy. And you know, the numbers are never, it's always funny because you might assume somebody might have a big following across any platform, which is true for a lot of people. But as our YouTube started to outpace our Instagram, I thought a lot of that traffic, we might be able to just get a lot of those people to follow us over on Instagram, but not always the case, you know? So, okay, we got that posted on Instagram now. And let's see what else you guys are saying here. So just around here, we've been dealing with our son Dexter. Started preschool, and unfortunately, he's been sick nonstop since starting preschool. And I sort of expected that because him being the last couple of years with the pandemic, just not being around a ton of kids and stuff. So this is his first time being surrounded by a bunch of kids at once. Since he started in August or whatever, he's just been nonstop sick. So this week has been the roughest for sure. So I know a lot of you other parents can relate to that. Nothing worse than sick kids, but and shout out to my wife for the mental strain that puts on any mother. And I know my mom was the same way. Boy, oh boy, when you got sick kids, that is rough. So let's see here. Rippin BTW says plans to do some more reviewing your customs. Yes, that is actually our next video coming up on YouTube next week. I believe that'll be dropping Wednesday night. Small chance it's Thursday night, but that video will be going up next week. And then right after that, I'll open up some submissions for future episodes over on Instagram. So stay tuned over there if anybody is interested in having a pair featured on reviewing your customs. We're up to episode 17. Crazy. Started that series 3 years ago. Nick P here says Dillon's a real OG, a true pioneer of custom sneakers and restorations. Well, thank you, Nick. Dillon, John, Vic Almighty gave me the inspiration to start doing this work. Very cool, man. That just hearing something as simple as that hey, you made me get started, or you encouraged me to keep going, or anything like that never gets old hearing. You know what I mean? It always still holds a tremendous amount of value to me, knowing that the content we put out, whether it be the videos or the messages, to know that it matters, definitely is. Not that I need a ton of motivation to want to keep going, but it constantly is. It's constantly fuel to know, hey man, it is working. Because sometimes you can't help but question somebody like myself. I can't help but question, man, like is what I'm doing resonating with anybody? Is this message getting across? And so to hear that it is, certainly makes it all the more worth it. MDGHCJ says, how do you feel about the Jordan 11 Platinum Tint as a canvas shoe? So I actually don't believe I've even held one of those in person, so I'm not entirely sure of the materials. Let me do a quick Google search. Jordan 11 Platinum, but I believe they don't have the patent leather, right? Like I believe that panel is entirely suede or something. Yes, it is. Yes, so those are cool. I'm trying to look at the rest of the materials. So is there no leather on there? Yeah, so mesh, some suede. Yeah, those are a cool canvas because unfortunately, most of the time, I don't ever paint patent leather. Just because I don't believe it's really durable. So that's really cool that you get to work on those and paint any part you want, really. Tom's World says, have you made a guide on your airbrush stencils? What do you mean, Tom? Tell me what you mean by a guide as far as how to make them or how to use them. Just in terms of how to make them, they're made with a laser cutter. But in terms of how to use them, I could definitely reference you to a specific video. So you let me know what you mean by that, Tom. Nick says, Dillon, I wish you'd start making your own custom color mixes and selling them for a profit. For example, Chicago One Varsity Red. Yeah, so I wouldn't even do that because of my partnership with Angelus, that I wouldn't be trying to sell their paint for profit. But I have thought about potentially talking with them before about people have asked me, hey, what would you do if you could make your own custom color? I think that would be pretty cool if there was. Who knows? Maybe I could have a line of a few different colors. I'll have to ask Tyler from Angelus if he'd be down for that, to let me make a few custom mixes of something like that. Turbo Man here, 3000 says, Dillon definitely got me to try it. It's literally been therapy for me. That's awesome, man. And then follows up with, can you do a video on stencil layering? Yes, we actually dropped in May a hour-long video on doing a multi-layer stencil, and I believe that's the best tutorial that's ever been put out on our YouTube page, if it's what you're looking for, because it's an hour long of me going into incredibly detailed specifics. So if that's what you're wanting to learn, I believe that you could learn just about everything from it. But if you have no interest in multi-layer stenciling or using vinyl stencils, it's not going to be the video for you, you know? Um, Upload Savior here says, how do you clean dirt off of custom shoes with Angelus matte finish on it? I would probably say your best bet would just be a simple, if the paint's actually adhered to the shoe, you're not going to have any issue if you just use like a soft bristled brush, whether that be from the Angelus sneaker cleaner or like your Rejuvenator, your Jason Mark, any of that stuff would be fine. But you could also use uh what would it be? Just like a classic soap and rag. You know what I mean? Nothing too crazy. Let me go ahead and scroll up a bit to try to find some stuff. Mauricio here says, in my country, people don't pay what it costs. I'm from Ecuador. Any advice for that? Yes. So unfortunately, I do get this question from a lot of people that say, hey, from my area, from my country, people aren't willing to pay for it. The beautiful thing about that is that we all have free access for the most part to social media. So you don't have to only work with people in your area. If you can be discovered by other people, there's no reason, Mauricio, that people from the USA wouldn't purchase from you if you were the artist they wanted to work with. At the end of the day, to purchase or to send a pair of custom shoes, a box that weighs 3 pounds, at least, I'm talking about our cost. Typically, from my experience, to anywhere in the world, it's typically going to be somewhere between $50 and $100. Now, if you're talking about a $200 pair of custom shoes, yes, it's going to be hard to get somebody to want to pay $100 additional for shipping if we're talking about half the cost. But if you're a highly touted artist who's charging $1,500 for a pair of custom shoes, then that $100 of shipping won't matter that much to somebody who's already willing to pay that much for your artwork. So I think just continue to try to find work outside of your area. That's the best advice, because it's a custom sneakers are just becoming more and more of a global thing. There's no reason that you can't work with other additional people. Let's see here. Carlos the Masterpiece says, any advice in adding heat transfer vinyl? I wanted to add some details, but I ended up either melting it or it's not sticking. I'm going to open this one up to the chat, Carlos. I have literally zero experience with heat transfer vinyl because I don't use it. I have no intentions to use it. I wouldn't use it because I would, just for my own artistic style, I want to prove that I can paint anything. So heat transfer vinyl just isn't for me. But hopefully there might be somebody here in the chat who maybe has a little bit of experience, can help you with it. From what it sounds like, melting it or it's not sticking, it could be that maybe you're not working with, maybe somebody has a better recommendation for a different heat transfer vinyl, or maybe just a different tool for applying it, whether that's a different brand of mini iron or something like that. So if I'm not getting to anybody's question, please feel free to ask it again, as I try to certainly get to as many of these as possible. But the chat is flying today. You guys are all doing good. So Patrick, how you doing, buddy? Always here in the chats. Always great to see your smiling face, Patrick Willis. Hey, Dylan, I wanted to recreate your red Galaxy Jordan 10s you did. What stencil and steps did you do? Yeah, so that pair, I actually just laid down a completely red base, and then I just used a Galaxy stencil. So I just took some different shades of red, started applying that, throughout the different areas of the stencil to sort of create some of the clouds. And then I did, so like some darker shades of red, some lighter shades of red. And then for some of the brightest clouds, I just did like a pure white. And then I did some white splatter with a toothbrush for some of the stars. And then to really highlight some of the stars and create that glow, you just go in with some white paint inside of your airbrush and, apply behind some bigger white dots to sort of create that cool glowing effect. So yeah, that's a really cool pair of Jordan 10s. I'm trying to think of what base shoe that was. I can't remember. That pair is probably from 2014-ish, if I had to remember. And I can't think of what base shoe that specifically is. What Jordan 10 colorways came out back then? I can't remember. I don't think that was a pair of Chicago's, because I think they had a red midsole. So yeah, I can't even remember specifically which ones those were. But nonetheless, good luck with those, Patrick. Let me know. I'd love to see them when you're done. Let's see. Nick P here says heat transfers are dependent on material, printer, and the iron you're using. You're not supposed to use steam when doing that. Yeah, so again, sort of some of those things that I thought could be the error, whether that's the material or the iron. You know, you need to make sure that you have those nailed down. Let's see. Royalty Custom Sneaker says, I'm currently working on a pair putting rhinestones onto an Air Force. I have done just over half, and it's taken 14 hours. This job truly is a labor of love. Man, do I hope those turn out dope for you, man, because halfway in at 14 hours, it's going to be a 30-hour pair. That is crazy. All while just doing rhinestones. I haven't done that on a pair of shoes, thankfully. Let's see here. Leaderboard Custom says, with the Silhouette Cameo, do you ever run into issues with fonts looking flawed when making smaller stencils? I'm having that issue with my Cricut, thinking about making the switch. So let me know what you mean looking flawed. Like, are you saying that like what's supposed to be a very straight line is no longer coming out straight? Or is it just that it's cutting a little bit too deep? Because it sounds like potentially you may just need to dial in the settings more with some really small fonts. Like, let's just say, hypothetically, since everyone would be familiar with these, if you were trying to print, you know, almost like the off-white font that goes on the insides of the shoes where it says off-white for Dillon, Jordan 1s, Chicago, Illinois, USA. If you were trying to nail that font and it was incredibly small and it wasn't printing right for you, you may just need to go at a different speed or a different force. But if for whatever reason, like just the fonts are coming out jagged, that shouldn't be too much of an issue. But one thing I've noted, I'm not sure of your workflow specifically, but if you're mapping out the stencils in a software like Photoshop and then sending it over to your cutting software, you might be losing some of the quality because you're now rasterizing the image versus if you were creating the stencil with the font in the cutting software itself. Like if you actually had the font imported into the cutting software, because then it's going to be, forgive me if I'm saying these wrong, if anybody's computer super savvy guy, but if the font is already imported into the cutting software, then it'll be vectorized and more easily scalable to where you shouldn't lose any quality if you're shrinking or upscaling. So let me see if you followed up here at all with that. But yeah, that could be what it is. That could be what it is. Yes, exactly. The off-white font's supposed to cut a T and the lines are straight. Okay, so yes. Make sure that you're doing the font in the cutting software itself, or you could be losing some quality if you're going from Photoshop to cutting software. But yes, you may just need to, if you are in Photoshop and then transferring over, you may just need to save at a higher quality so that it's more easily scalable. But yes, at least on the Silhouette, I don't run into that issue. But again, I'm teetering on it might be more of like a workflow thing rather than Cricuts aren't capable of handling that. BN here says, I always apply 4 to 5 layers, but should I keep applying 4 to 5 layers for additional picks, stencils I place on top of the initial layer? So what I believe you're asking is if you're doing like a multi-layer stencil. Correct me if I'm wrong, BN. But, you know, you might be asking here, hey, if I'm doing multi-layer stencil with 4 colors and I lay down my background that takes maybe 4 colors, and then all of a sudden I do color 1, that's 4 colors, and I have to do color 2 on top of that, another 4 layers. Um, you know, would it be okay if I got to some point where there's like 16 layers of paint somewhere? I think that's sort of what your question is. Is that okay? Typically, it's not okay if you're painting them in a area that will crease, because then that'll crack right away. But for example, there was basically no way around it. For me, in my multi-layer stencil situation on the throwback Pistons logo that I did on the pair of Jordan 3s. And the reason for that is just the way that every logo is going to be different. So sometimes the color has to go on top of another color. Other times the colors might be separated within the logo to where you're not stacking them on top of one another per se. So, but where I placed it on the shoe, I don't have to worry about the shoe creasing there. So even if I were to end up with a spot where maybe because I had to stack some colors, I ended up with one really small area of the eyeball or the nose of the horse or whatever where there was 12 layers of paint or something like that, it's okay in a very, very, very small area. It's not like I'm coating the entire shoe with 12 layers of paint. So yes. But great question, Ben. Great, great question. Let's see here. Hockey Sticks Posse says, what would I have to do to get a sponsor or help with getting paints and stencils? So just in terms of, I'm not sure if the question is more towards like how to get an Angel sponsor, or I'm just going to assume that's probably it. Getting, a paint sponsor. At the end of the day, what any sponsorship is going to be about is the company's going to be looking for you to promote their product and in turn create more sales for them than they would have had without you. So if a company can supply you with paint, but you're able to convince 10 other people to purchase paint and become lifelong customers, then it's going to be worth it. So sponsorships are all about being two-way streets. You know what I mean? That was just a very, very rough example that I gave, but any type of sponsorship is about to be a two-way street where the two parties want something from one another. You know what I mean? The company wants you to promote the product to create sales, and then you as the user want the company because you want the product. So how do you gain a sponsorship? Well, you are going to need, in terms of from a company like Angelus, at the end of the day, you want to be doing something different than what everyone else is doing, because you want to attract new eyeballs, do stuff that people haven't seen before. And it really, really, really helps if you can start to grow a following. So because then you have a larger untapped audience. So it's hard to get a sponsorship, even if you're an absolutely tremendous artist, if you have no following. Because even if you're the best artist in the world and the company would like to sponsor you, if you're not going to in turn create more revenue for them, then that's not necessarily what they would be looking for in traditional terms of, just generally speaking of a sponsorship. So. Let's see here. LSG here says, did you go to school for art or are you self-taught? I'm thinking about going to school for art and nervous of making that decision. I did not. I went to college for architecture. I completed 3 out of 5 years to get a bachelor's in architecture. I took one painting class, but it was really about the first semester was like some sketching and some watercolor painting, and then the second semester was about charcoal drawings. Had to do the nude male model one time. I think we might have done that twice. That was interesting. But other than that, no, I'm not classically trained in art. I didn't even take until I got to college and I took that one painting class. The last art class I took was 6th grade, because in junior high, 7th, 8th grade, and all of high school, I was so focused my entire life on becoming an architect that I didn't even take any art classes since it was an elective. I was just focused on, I took all of the drafting classes and computer stuff so that I could be better prepared for college. So I didn't have a traditional background in art. My younger brother actually is way more classically trained in art than me. I mean, he took art all of high school, all of junior high, all of the AP, all of the independent study art, whatever. Funny enough, his senior year, we were already 3, 4 years into the business. He has like this independent art studies class. I don't even know what it was called, but they have to like almost create their own project, come up with something unique on their own. And I think it had to be like 10 to 12 of something. So 10 to 12 sculptures or 10 to 12 canvases or something like that. He said he told the teacher he was going to do like 10 or 12 pairs of custom shoes, for the entire year. That was going to be his project. And the teacher said no, that like custom shoes couldn't be art or something like that. So this was 2015. And so it was funny because we just laughed at, man, it's funny that nobody would know how big of a market that this actually is and will continue to be. So, yeah, I wish that I would be more. I wish that I would have had a stronger background in art, just the fundamentals. I mean, literally the basics of art. What is contrast? You know what I mean? Color theory. Like I'm not trained in any of that, so just had to learn it all really myself. I think the area, I kid you not, what I've learned the most about art from is the TV show Ink Master. It's a tattoo competition. I've referenced it a million times on this YouTube channel, but for anybody who hasn't heard me talk about it before, I kid you not, I've learned more about art from that show than anything in my entire life. So, whether you want to learn more about art or you enjoy tattoos, I highly, highly recommend it. It's on this. They just brought it back. It's on Paramount Plus now, along with all the old seasons, and then they brought it back with switched it up a little bit. There's a new host. One of the twin brothers from Good Charlotte is now the host, and yeah, love that show, man. Owe a lot to it, that's for sure. Sneaky Reeky Customs with an absolutely killer question. Your top 5 customizers. I would totally be missing people, but to me, I can always name two that I think have. I also have to think about this in terms of like who's been influential on me, who inspires me, who do I look to as like, oh my, and they're just untouchable. To me, the GOAT is Mosh. He's number one. One of the other artists who really got me into customizing, who unfortunately you just don't see as much from nowadays, is El Capi. I think he is an absolute killer. But then, boy, I got to pick 3 other ones. Okay, so I'm going to say Diversitile. Again, another artist who you just don't see enough from nowadays, but when I was just getting into custom shoes and like during the blog era, before we even got past the 2010s, Diversitile was one of the artists that was on all of the blogs on Sneaker News, Nice Kicks, things like that. Two more. Biased, but I really do think my friend Sean from Color Me Fresh is just doing absolutely incredible things with the anime genre, cartoon, fun stuff like that. I mean, he's absolutely killer. And then one more. One more. If I had to pick a recon guy, I could say somebody like JBF Customs, but one more honorable mention, painter. You know who's a killer is Andrew Lewis, who does a lot of NBA shoes primarily. So I mean, geez, who are some of his clientele? Who was he doing almost like daily or almost every game of the season a new pair for? I think his name was Langston Galloway. I think it was with the Suns last year, but Andrew Lewis. Um, and almost every pair was like a drop dead gorgeous portrait. And I'm like, how is he cranking these out daily almost? So he's absolutely killer. Dylan, do you still work a day job or are you fully onto sneakers YouTube? Yeah, so I've been full time with sneakers for I left school in after 2013. After 2013, yes, that would have been my last semester of school. So I've been full time since then. Captain Custom says, do you have a video working on a suede Jordan 6? I do not, unfortunately. I do not. I do not, unfortunately, on a suede Jordan 6. I'm trying to think of which Jordan 6 you might be referencing, and the only ones I could think about would have a black suede, and black suede is really tricky to work with. Royalty Custom Sneakers. Interesting. This is just my story. I did not do art in high school beyond what was mandatory. I am now studying art at university, and it is the biggest waste of time and haven't been taught anything. That's unfortunate. It's unfortunate to hear that. But I can honestly say I'm not necessarily surprised. You hear this with a lot of people's experience from college. What's up, buddy? Let's see here. Soulbound Footwear says, what's the best way to decide how much you'll charge for a custom piece as a beginner? Great question. Excuse me. One where there is never a simple formula that works for anybody. We have a good video that is linked in the description of this video. That's something that I always like to reference for anybody who's just curious about coming up with how to price their own artwork. And there's no formula, but it at least gives you points to think about and things to consider. And some things that are important to do when you're just starting out: do a little bit of market research, see what you believe other comparable artists are charging. What do shoes like what I'm about to create typically go for? So are you creating artwork that's typically going to be in the $300 range, or are you right away a really rock solid artist? Maybe you have a background and you're going to be pouring in a ton of hours into pieces that look like they should be going for $1,000 or something like that. So it depends on what sort of style of pieces you're going for. And just when you're starting out with shoes, to me, it's so important about just getting experience under your belt. You're not going to know what to charge. You're not going to have any clue at all until you start to get some more experience under your belt. Start to just have more pairs completed that you could think to yourself, okay, cool. Something like that took me 30 hours. Something like that took me 50 hours. Something like that took me 100 hours. Something like that over there took me 4 hours. Now I know what to charge accordingly and go from there, because what you would charge for simple color blocking that might take you 4 to 6 hours would be very different than what you would charge for a piece that I'm going to put 100 hours into. You know what I mean? And if you're just starting out, even if you put 100 hours into a piece, that doesn't necessarily mean that right away you'll be able to sell it for $1,000+. It's so important to just get experience under your belt and repetition. And I know a lot of people don't want to hear this. I wouldn't have wanted to hear this. Would have said, "Shut up, dude," on wherever I'm watching this. But don't let it be about the money at first. Just let it be about getting the experience under your belt, learning how to work with customers and things like that, and the money will come. The money will follow if you continue to have a great product that is in demand, that people want. If you can prove that, if you can prove there's a demand for your artwork, I promise you the money will follow. But don't just get too tripped up over worrying about that when starting out. I believe that just make enough money to continue to afford to buy new supplies and things like that. Don't just go right into it thinking I'm just going to absolutely crush it right away and things like that. That's my tips. Let's see. Owen says, is there a market for non-traditional silhouettes? Absolutely. Yeah. It depends what you're referring to. I mean, just non-traditional silhouettes. So right away you're rolling out like an Air Force One, a Jordan 1. Are you talking about as simple as like maybe a Jordan 5? Or are you talking about something totally different, like a random pair of Team Jordans or a certain specific Air Max or something like that? But there absolutely is. for many, many years, up until the last, like, I'd say 4 years, not everybody was customizing Air Force Ones. I truly mean that. I truly mean that. Until, like, I don't know, 2017, 2018. Just not, I kid you not, between 2011 when I started and like 2018 when we really got onto YouTube, I think I painted like one or two pairs of Air Force Ones in that like 7 years. Whereas since then, it's been almost all of that. Jeremy Cole here says, any advice for customizing painting when you can't draw? You're just going to need to put in a little bit more work than somebody who can or can't draw, because, you know, let me think about this, Jeremy. It depends on if you're trying to get to a point where you're doing things where you need to draw, such as freehand characters or something like that. Or do you plan on always having the sort of style where you're just doing clean color blocking and things like that, where it's maybe not as important that you know how to draw, but somebody who knows how to draw already has probably maybe a little bit better hand-eye coordination than somebody who's never drawn before. They already have some of that pattern behavior down with how to control their hands and how to paint and how to do things precisely and how to really detail things out, you know? So I always compare it to, like, if you're starting a new sport, and is it going to be easier for somebody to go learn how to play basketball who's already a really good football player and just a freak athlete versus somebody who has no athletic experience, but they're both playing basketball for the first time ever? Well, the person who already is a freak athlete and already maybe has some really good hand-eye coordination, chances are they're going to be better off playing basketball for the first time. You know what I mean? So let's see. Nick says, be honest, Dylan, do you put a respirator on every time you use barge cement or airbrush? It's super smelly, but so annoying to wear that damn thing while painting. So I have an airbrush booth over there, so that definitely helps knock down a lot of it. Do I do one every time? No, I don't every time, but I do right away if I know I'm working on multiple pairs at once. If I have to batch things, then I know I'm going to be spraying consistently for a while, so I'll absolutely throw one on. Ethan here says, I'm struggling with getting a black to white gradient over a small area just on the swoosh. Any tips? Ethan, have you tried or are you familiar with our middle bar technique? Let me know if you are, and I'll sort of answer from there if you're familiar with that. Ooh, Eddie, great question. Eddie, I am also really, really, really looking forward to meeting you. Eddie's going to be attending the next DCF experience. Super excited. I've chatted with Eddie for, boy, has it been a couple years now, Eddie, that I've been connected with you? At least a year plus. We've chatted plenty of times, so really looking forward to meeting you. But his question is, Dylan, with all your success with being a shoe customizer, what has been your biggest failure in the custom shoe business, and how did you overcome it? Let me try to think. My biggest failure. My biggest failure would be, I think 4 or 5 years in, I took on a business partner. I got connected with a family friend who was graduating college, and he was getting a couple different degrees, business and then like economics or something like that. So coming from that type of background, and he was looking to get in, he wanted to start businesses after college. We're around the same age. I think he was a year younger than me. So my old partner, Chris, he's been on the channel a few times. And so I was already, doing this 4 or 5 years full time. And I was at that point, again, trying to take it to sort of another level. I was still 24-ish at the time, still living at home. I hadn't reached, like some insane salary where I could support myself and a family and things like that. So anyways, we decided to link up. We went back and forth on, how we would structure the business, all this type of stuff. And he really helped legitimize a lot of the business. So previously I had just been DeJesus Customs, I was treating it like a business, but it was much more almost like a hobby. But with him, his mother was a lawyer, still is the corporate lawyer for DCF. And so they really helped legitimize. Oh, what? Where do we get disconnected? Camera? Shouldn't be the battery. Let me see. Might just need to change camera battery. Ba-ba-ba. You guys can still hear me? Weird. Properties. Ba-ba-ba. FaceTime. There's that camera. How come I can't access my other one? Although we may just have to stick with the laptop camera. Yes. Anyways, where I was at. So they really helped legitimize the business and get it incorporated, things like that. And this is when I first got my own studio downtown. And this is when we started working with a lot of NFL players, and just having another person on board just really helped legitimize things. And we did some big things over the 3 years that we were in that studio together. And so why I consider that my biggest failure is because after the 3 years, like the building was selling, the building was going to be sold, and our lease was up. And so we were trying to figure out what we were going to do next. And we hadn't really grown that much after like the first year together. And so Chris had another idea of creating he wanted to add it onto DCF, a business where it could be a lot more affordable for anybody. So this is when Ultra Boost were super popular in like 2017. So he wanted to create vinyl adhesives that could go on the stripes of Ultra Boost, and people could change them out. So different colors, but you would purchase them for cheap. You know what I mean? So basically, you would pick up a pack of these stripes for $15, and then ideally you're picking up multiple packs, and after a month or so, you want to swap them out for different ones. And so he wanted to do that with the DCF, but I thought at the end of the day, I thought that would cheapen the artwork. That I thought it would be weird to have a part of the business that was selling these $15 kind of stickers for shoes, and then also trying to sell $1,000+ artwork. I didn't think that would ultimately work for the business. So basically, we ended up splitting up, and still on great terms, still work together all the time. Chris is actually at the DCF experience with us. Like, he's still a great friend. I chat with him at least weekly, and so his business is called Boosted Stripes, and he's still going strong after all these years since we split up. And so yeah, but I do consider that a failure because we had such high hopes for what we would be able to build together. So that one's just like in terms of the business, but now I'm trying to think of another one. Biggest failure. Yeah, that one. And yeah, I think that's the one that comes to mind for me. So yeah, great question though, Eddie. Great question. Another one's gonna come to me later and be like, I should have told that story. That would have been a good one. Charmel Parker here says, how long did it take to get to where you are now? So I customized my first pair of shoes in fall of 2011, and I left school to pursue this full time in the summer of 2013. So yes. Oh, hey, my cousin Nick's in the chat. What's up, cuz? Sending love from Michigan. Shout out to Jasper. He turns 2 today. Happy birthday to my little cousin, man. That is awesome. Crazy that he's already 2. Man, I remember Brandy. That's when you guys came in and she was pregnant. But wow, crazy. Already 2, man. That's insane, Nick. And you got a teenager just about and a 2-year-old on your hands, man. I know you got your hands full, so shout out to you, Nick. Thanks for checking in, cuz. Jeremy here says, are there any new different tools or products that you're using since you posted the video explaining what you use to customize? Love this question, Jeremy. I'm trying to think of which tools I might not have had in there. There's a couple, but I know that these tools were in the, because that video on what I use to customize, I believe, is coming up on 2 years old now. But I did a video last Christmas on like gifts for customizers under $20 that I know I had both of these in there. So a glue and residue eraser is great for getting residue off the soles. And then a Frixon pen. It might be Frixion. I think it's just Frixon. But anyways, it's a thermo-activated pen. So it's great for sketching if you're working on like a white canvas. Because if you apply heat, it'll erase it. So really comes in handy for a lot of different things. Other than that, I don't believe so. Other than the Angelus Matte 4-coat, that is a newer product in the last year, I believe. But I'm just like looking at my desk to see if there's anything else on there that might be helpful. That's about it. Those things I posted an Instagram reel. I got a bunch of questions yesterday. I think I'll do a video on this soon, but I also use an oil palette knife sometimes to lift up, to pry up the edges of the swoosh on a pair of Jordan 1s so that you have a little bit of a shield to paint the edges. But I do plan on doing a video on that soon. DCF pod royalty. If you're referencing this as a one of the failures, absolutely, that I've never been able to start the DCF podcast. Absolutely, yeah. Jason and I had plans, but just never got around to doing that. Ethan says, I have actually never heard of the middle bar technique. Would that help? Absolutely, yeah. So if you go on any video on our page, just search like DeJesus gradient. In any of the videos, I talk about the middle bar technique, and that will absolutely help you. Absolutely. Let's see. God Perp here says, when is it necessary to scuff leather with sandpaper when prepping, or is it every time? I prep all of my leather with sandpaper, unless you're working with like extremely high quality designer shoes like Gucci or Balenciaga, something like that, where you're working with a really premium grade leather. Then you don't need to, but Air Force One, Jordan 1s, you're not working with a high quality leather. So I do sand all of those. RH says, how far are you going to take your brand and what you do? Great question. I have no idea. You know, I think a lot of times in business, sometimes you get the question of what is your 5-year plan or things like that. And I just never know because it always changes. So if at any given point, if you asked me at the start of every year over the last 10 years, what my 5-year plan looks like or what I project the next year to look like, I would have a different guess every single time. There was different times where my goal was to open up a shop. There was other times where my goal was to just expand the team to have 8 other people that could paint like me and paint thousands of pairs of shoes per year. So it just constantly changes. So I never know. I just want to continue doing what I love, making cool videos, helping other people, building out our course, taking that worldwide, painting cool shoes for NFL athletes. Me being a huge sports fan, I'll always love seeing athletes wear things that I painted. And yeah, who knows? Who knows? Jeremy here with this will be one of our last questions. I'll go about 5 more minutes after this one, but a great question. Do you have any advice to avoid burnout? Avoiding burnout. I think that, you know, a lot of the like generic stuff is or just stuff that you'll commonly hear. Step away, of course. Go and do another hobby. Go and do something that is unrelated that you enjoy doing. Maybe you enjoy golfing. Maybe you enjoy fishing. Maybe you enjoy watching movies. Maybe you enjoy some way to decompress per se. Something that you never hear people say, but this is something that I honestly do, is and I'm not saying this is the right way. I'm just saying that I've never heard anybody say this, and this is truly what I do sometimes. Push past it. Like, in terms of business, there's a lot of things that I do in this business besides just painting. So things like creating content and things like that. So if I feel burnt out painting, in order to still continue to push the business forward, let me go and focus on creating content or things like that. So rather than me saying, let me step away and go fishing or golfing, some other hobby, sometimes I just do something else in the business, even if it's, oh man, I'm so burnt out on editing videos. Let me get back to painting. You know what I mean? Or even if I'm just painting, but I'm really stuck, like, yeah, sometimes the best advice might not be to just push past it, because you might not actually create something you want to do if you're not in the best mindset and things like that. But maybe there's something else in the business you could do to, still be, what's the word I'm looking for? Not profitable, but still be furthering the momentum. What is the why? It's on the tip of my tongue. To still be, it's not profitable. To still be, when you're getting stuff done. What is the word? Why am I drawing a total blank on it? Somebody who gets a lot of work, not efficient. I am drawing a total blank. It's the end of Friday, so I don't know. Unfortunately. Still be, why is my brain trying to say profitable? I don't know what I'm trying to say. Productive. There it is. I don't know. I have no idea why that would not come out. Thank you so much. Thank you to is it Latita and AJ. Thank you guys. Thank you. Nick here says, as someone who commonly references tattoo artist and ink master, when do you see yourself getting your first tattoo? I am like 10 years late on getting my first tattoo, man. I would love to just dive in and do a sleeve right away, like Jason did. So Jason had no tattoos, and then in under a year, he ended up with 2 sleeves. I think he did 3 sessions on each arm, and he would do the sessions like a month apart. And so anybody who hadn't seen him in a year, all of a sudden he had 2 killer sleeves. And I think he had a crazy high pain tolerance though, man, because yeah, I think he would go to these like 4 to 6 hour sessions. And yeah, he was crazy, but I am overdue, man. I am overdue. And I don't know. I've never sat down for like a day and said, I'm going to come up with what I want. I'm going to start researching the artist and doing it. I'm a big old baby. Let's see. The Angelus paint caps, they sell them on their website in packs of 12. Royalty says, are you excited for the Bulls this year? Truth be told, I am not, because of the Lonzo injury. Lonzo, to me, although he's not the Bulls' best player, I think he is, and I think it's not even correct to say he's the most important player, because that would be Zach or DeMar, but he's almost like the ceiling. He's almost the ceiling raiser for the Bulls, if you know what I mean. So they're not going to go that far without like a fully healthy squad and a healthy Lonzo. You know what I mean? So, and Zach dealing with knee surgery, already missing the first 2 games of the season. So, with a healthy Lonzo, I would be more excited than I am. So, okay, let's go. Final question here of the day. Let's end with this one. Owen says this is more of a life-related one. I really love being creative and feel like I could possibly pursue a career in my creative field, but I feel like taking a risk that could end poorly. Any advice? Sometimes you need to prove it first. Like if you're already having a job, and let's say you already are maybe doing something within your creative field, maybe you could prove to yourself and anybody else that you need to prove it to that there's a demand for what you're doing in your creative field. So whether it's custom shoes or anything else, if you could prove that there's a demand, then you can have a stronger belief in yourself rather than just sort of quitting your job and saying, you know what, I'm just going to figure this out. If you can already prove to yourself that, hey, you know what, I could do this, there is a demand for this, you want to almost be able to really ask yourself, you almost want to be thinking this to yourself. What would happen if I dedicated all of my time to this? What could I do if this was the only thing that I was worried about? And that was something that I was continuously saying to myself when I was in college and doing shoes at the same time. I just remember constantly asking myself, man, what could I do if I just dedicated all of my time to this? Because I believe that I already started to prove that there was a demand in the business. Now, imagine what I would be able to do if I just dedicated everything to that. So if you could sort of start to do that, maybe before you leave your job or fully take that leap of faith, then I think it'll be an easier pill for you to swallow. So that would be my advice there, Owen. So all right, guys, that's going to do it for me. Thank you guys so much for joining us here for another episode of DCF Live. This was a fun one. Got to show you guys some of the pairs that were created at the last DCF experience. Got to talk to some of you guys about the upcoming one. Like I said, we still have a couple spots available if you're interested in attending. 3 weeks from today, we have that linked in the description. If you want to check it out, head over to that page, see everything that's included. Please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions at all regarding the course. I am more than glad to answer and talk to you about it, whatever your questions may be. Nothing too big or small. And go ahead and make sure you stay tuned for next week's episode of Reviewing Your Customs. But other than that, everybody have a great, safe, happy, healthy weekend and create some really cool stuff. All right. See you guys. Peace.